4 dinim in the Mishnah. A maximum height is 20 amas. Maximum height is 10 tvachim. You need 3 walls, and you have still some merubah chamasa. Those are 4 dinim in the Mishnah. Now, basically, we discussed 3 reasons why 20 amas high would be a problem. Over 20 amas would be a problem. On Daf Gimel, we discussed a sukkah gedola and a gezerah because of that, and sukkah katana, 2 machlokes of Bisham and Hillel. On Gimel and Rebeis, we discussed 10 halachas that pertain to an area that's 4 by 4 amas. Daf Daled brought us to the 8 dinim that they passed in the Medrash regarding the height of the sukkah, how to minimize your sukkah, and the like. And the 3 dinim we were introduced to G'dayf and Akuma, Lavud, and Gurasik. Dalid Amid Beis told us the halachas of Reb Yaakov Shita that a dyumdin, if you had 1 am and 1 am on the corners, that will work for your sukkah as well. Daf Hey brought us to the minimum height of the sukkah, and we discussed the 3 ways where you would know the minimum height of 10 tvachim: the aron and the kaperis, or from the kruvim covering the aron, or from halachah l'meishim Sinai. Yesterday we discussed this halachah, 3 things that were halachah l'meishim Sinai. Shiurin, we went through the pasuk of Eretz Chita So'era, and that pasuk is ultimately just an asmachta to different shiurim. We spoke about chatzitza and Ruba Yomakbid, the din of Ruba Yomakbid and Ruba Shein Yomakbid and Miyut Umakbid, and the din of Mechitzas, which was either the Halacha L'Meishim Sinai, the 3 or 4 Halacha L'Meishim Sinai which are included in that, one being the 10 Tvachim, Gurasik, David Akuma, and Lavud, and then it may also include included in that is a halacha that a sukkah, the one of the walls of the sukkah only have to be 1 tefach, and that brought us into this machlokes between Reb Shimon and the chachamim of how many walls you actually need for your sukkah. Is it enough to have 2 in a tefach or 3 in a tefach? And we brought 5 ways to understand that machlokes between Reb Shimon and the chachamim. Okay, that brings us to the way bottom of Vav Amid Beis, the 3 lines from the bottom, last 2 words on the page. The Gemara wants to know, where should you put this tefach? You got 2 walls and a tefach. Where does that extra tefach wall go? Okay, so we're going to have 4 options where that tefach goes. So here we go. Let's learn it inside. So where do you put that tefach? Amarav ma'amida keneged hayotzei. Okay, assuming your 2 walls were connected at a corner, so you could put it at the other end of either one of those either one of those walls. So if you had a wall over here, you could either put it over here or you could put it up there. Okay, keneged hayotzei. That is Rav Shita. Amri leir of Kahan Ravasi. Two Talmidim of Rav, they said to Rav, V'yamidenu keneged rosh tur. Why don't you put it keneged rosh tur? Rosh tur is the top of a furrow when you're plowing. So why don't you? And that was on an angle. Okay. So the way, the diagrams, at least in my Gemara has it, is that what they're asking is put it on. I agree with you. You put it keneged hayotzei, that you put it at the end of one of the walls, but you should put it on an angle. So this way, at least it looks like you have 4 walls. Right? That's one way to learn. It. The Maharam learns Pshat and Rashi. Well, it covers 4 sides. When you put it on an angle, so then you're going to have it's going a little bit in this direction and a little bit in that direction. So you already have 2. So putting it on an angle will give you as if it's like another 2. Right? The way Maram learns Rashi is that you should actually put it opposite. Again, if you have your 2 sides create a right angle, so the Maram learns Rashi saying you should put it opposite the angle, opposite the corner. So if these are your 2 walls, put it over there on an angle, opposite it, so then it looks like you have 4 walls. In either event, Shasik Rav paid no attention to them. He didn't feel, he wasn't chashul dvarim. He didn't care for their argument. That's where the Baal Mar learns. I forgot who it was. One of the Achrayim say, well, he actually agrees to them that you could do that, and maybe that would be a nice thing to do, but you don't have to do that. And Rav was telling you the din, the minimum you need to do is to put a keneged hayotzi. But if you want to put it opposite the corner to make it look nicer, kol hakavod. Okay, that's shita number one. Itmanami Amar Shmuel Mishret Levi, same thing. Mamida keneged hayotzi. V'chein Meir be Midrasha. That's how they paskin. Mamida keneged hayotzi. So that is our first option. Option number two, that was two options because Rav Kana and Ravasi gave another option. Now, Rav Simon Vitim Rav Shua ben Levi Omer, Oisa, this is long, this is Gishmak. Oisa like tefach sheichik. When you make your tefach, don't make it a tefach mitzumtzum. A tefach is 4 fingers. Don't make it 4 close fingers. Make it happy. Why braids? If someone's happy, so make it a smiley tefach that your 4 fingers should be separated. Make it a little larger than a tefach. Uma amidei bepachas mishloisha tvachim samach l'dofen. And put it within, don't put it right next to one of the walls. Put it within 3 tvachim. Not at the 3 tvachim, within 3 tvachim, but at that mark. What do you get then? Because kol pachas mishloisha samach l'dofen kalavadam. That is like lavud. Okay, so that means it looks like, that means halachically speaking, I have a wall now that's 4 tvachim long, because lavud connects it to the wall that it's coming from, and this is already a tefach. It's more than a tefach. It's 4 tvachim, and the minimum size of a wall is 7 tvachim. So you have rubei kekulai. So this is the optimal way, he says, to make a amma sheichik. So that gives you a very halachically a strong wall. I think when learning Sukka, if you ever read Halachic Man, which I didn't, but I've read the summary of it from Salvation, right? So he talks about how, like, when you learn halacha, all of a sudden you see things differently. You see how things halachically. Right? You can see a pile of stones, and you see like dinam of Erev, and you see the sea looks. He gives you living halacha. So after learning Sukkah, you see things differently. Right? You see walls differently. You see mechitzas differently. You see things differently. Okay. That's option number 3. Amar Rav Yehuda. Now he gives us a different scenario, Rav Yehuda. He says your wall doesn't need, your 2 walls that are kosher don't have to make a corner. They can actually be parallel to each other. Amar Rav Yehuda, Sukka7 kamavui. Mavui, Rashi understands the mavui mefulish means it means 2 parallel walls. Kesheira. That's also good. And you could put them where you could put that tefach on either side that you want. It doesn't make a difference. Okay. Rav, how far away are these holes? How far away? That's a good question. I didn't see any shear. As long as your schach's going on top of them. But you have schach on top. And you're putting a tefach somewhere on the other side. On one of the 2 sides.
4 quarters now.
Oh, I only have, no. I all right. You could put, you have 4 options now, not just 2. Correct. Now, Rav Simon makes it. He says, "Wait, not so fast." Rav Simon v'tem Rav Shua ben Levi Omer. In this scenario, oislay pas arba. You need to take a board that's 4 tvachim umashahu, uma'amidei bepachas mishloisha samach l'deifen. You need to take a board that's a little more than 4 tvachim, put it within 3 tvachim of one of the walls. And that way, v'chal pachas mishleisha is kalav adami, and therefore, you'll have a wall that's like 7 tvachim. Okay? So he wants you to have your that tefach. He says, no, you can't, in this scenario, when you have a mavlim of foolish, you can't get away with a tefach. You need to have a 4 tefach and put it within 3 tvachim of the wall to give you a wall that's 7 tvachim. Brekta Gemara, why so? Why, in a case where you made a corner, it's enough to have a tefach, a smali tefach, umay shnacha, the ka'amid boy pas arba, and here you tell me you need a wall of 4 tvachim. So Mar says, Hasan, the Ika Shtei, the front is Gel Hasan, where you have 2 walls that connect when making a right angle, so Sagile betefach sheikh. Then you can use a tefach sheikh. But Hacha, the Leka Shtei, the front is, but here you don't even have 2 walls, they're parallel. Then a Ika Pas Arba in Eloi Loi. Then you need more. Rashi. He doesn't really. Rashi says shade upon a shleimus kilchas and kimin gam the nearest mufuloshes kahai that works. But if they're going to be parallel, that's it. Just I guess it just looks too. It doesn't look like an area, a space. You need to fill in a 3rd wall. Okay, now back. So far we have 3 options so far. Okay, you could you're putting a keneged hayotze, you're putting that keneged hayotze, but you're putting it on an angle. You're making a tefach sheichek. Okay, and the 4th option is that if you're having a mavim foolish, you need to put it. You need to make a ki'ilu 7 tefach wall. You need to have your wall needs to be at least 4 tefachim. Okay, now we have another Tanai. Amar Rava. Rava says the eina niteres ela b'tzuras haPesach. A tzuras haPesach, just to clarify, a tzuras haPesach is 3 poles basically, right? A tzuras haPesach is 2 lechis, 2 poles of any measurement, and a mashu, 2 poles, 2 vertical poles and 1 horizontal pole. That creates a tzuras haPesach, a doorway, right? An eruv. What we have going around town is a bunch of tzuras haPesachs. When you take the string, and so you can actually make. I was away once on vacation with my uncle, and he actually made the whole tzuras haPesach out of fishing string, because meaning either lech is going up could just be a mashu. So you put screws into the walls, tie a fishing string from the top to the bottom across, and came down with the fishing string. The whole thing was made out of fishing string, but it was a tzuras haPesach. It could be made out of anything. Okay, but that's a tzuras haPesach. So now,
but it's got to be strong enough. The car has to be strong enough to hold that in a brick or something like that. No,
it could be maybe if the but it can hold. It was sturdy. It's pretty strong. Okay, so he's saying here, Einani teres ela b'tzuras haPesach. He's saying for your tefach to work, it's not stam that you just put up a little. Your 3rd wall is not just a tefach. It needs to be made out of a tzuras haPesach. It needs to be made into a tzuras haPesach. Now, okay. Now, when he says that, he doesn't. He's Rashi understands in this scenario it means you take your tefach that we said and you divide it in half. So I take half a tefach is 1 lechi, a half a tefach to my other lechi. So so there's this. I got my 7 tvachim, and I have I got to put a string or something, a kair or something going across the top, and therefore that will mean my 3rd wall can be made out of a tefach, 2 half a tvachim with a kair on top. That's what he says. Now they weren't sure what Rava meant. Ikeda Amri Amar Rava v'niteres nami b'tzuras haPesach. He says you can also use a tzuras haPesach, meaning you don't need a tefach for your 3rd wall. You can just have a tzuras haPesach, and the tzuras haPesach needs to be. It could just be a mashu. You could not. That's not good. The other way to understand is that it's not enough to have a tefach. You need a tefach plus a tzuras haPesach. So we have 3 ways to go. Either we're splitting it. We're splitting your tefach in half and putting up a tzuras haPesach, or we're just using a tzuras haPesach, or we're having a tefach plus a tzuras plus a tzuras haPesach. So Rav Ashi Ashkel Rav Kana, Rav Ashi found Rav Kana, the Ka'ad tefach sheichek. He made a tefach sheichek. Remember the tefach sheichek was a tefach that was like this, and it was within 3 tvachim of your wall. He did that, and then he made a tzuras haPesach to the 7 tvachim mark. Okay, he did both. Amar Lei. So Rav Ashi says to Rav Kahana, "Loisaver Mar Lahad Rava." The Amar Rava v'niteres nami b'tzuras Pesach. That is either or. You don't have to do both. Amar Lei, Rav Kana told him, Anaki idach l'shnei Rava Sirle. I hold like the other shot in Rava. The Amar Rava u'tzricha nami b'tzuras Pesach, that you need both. Okay, so it's coming out here that if you're making a wall, if you only have two walls for your sukkah, and you want to use a third with using a tefach is it's a misnomer. You can't just use a tefach. You actually need to have your tefach shechek plus a tzuras pesach to let you use it. Okay, great. Now, great. Next Gemara is a fascinating Gemara. Fascinating Gemara, and it's a huge chiddush. Okay, when it comes to sukkah, we just said right now a very big heter in sukkah, right? You said that for a wall could be made out of an amma shechek with an amma shechek. Okay. What about if my sukkah, I built a sukkah in Rosh Hashanah? Okay, and let's say my house is right next to my house opens into Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so if you live in the city and you have a brownstone, but your Ramesh holds that the city is considered Mahans or Rosh Hashanah, so you open your door, you're in Rosh Hashanah, but you put your sukkah right outside in your front door. Okay, so if you have 4 walls up, you have 3 walls up, it's Rosh Hashanah, no problem. You can carry it from you made that Rosh Hashanah into Rosh Hashanah, so you can no problem carrying from your house into your sukkah, and you have no problem walking around and carrying things in your sukkah, also no problem. What if my sukkah was made with 2 walls and this tefach? Now on Shabbos that doesn't work, but on Sukkos it works. So what about Shabbos Chomay, Shabbos Sukkos? Okay. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava v'chein l'Shabbos. Similarly on Shabbos, migu dahavi doifel inyan sukkah. Since it's a wall for Sukkos, havi doifel inyan Shabbos. It's a wall for Shabbos as well, and therefore, whatever constitutes a sukkah will constitute a rishus hayachid, and you'll be able to eat, carry, and do whatever you need to do in your sukkah. It'll be considered rishus hayachid. Abaya asks, so migu? Do we say such a concept that if someone's a wall that works for Sukkot, it's going to work for Shabbos as well? But Tanya, we have a brisa that seems not like that. Doifin Sukkah kedoifin Shabbos. The brisa begins that the walls of Sukkah are the same as the walls for Shabbos. So whatever constitutes a wall for Hilchos Shabbos will constitute a wall for Sukkah. So the Rashi gives an example. For instance, if you have, if you made your wall out of reeds, okay, if you didn't have a lot of reeds are very thin, okay, and then you just put up horizontal walls, nothing going vertically, a bunch of poles, using a bunch of poles, bamboo poles, okay, but you didn't have so many, right? So you space them within 3 tvachim of each other. Right? So that works for Shabbos. And the same thing the other way. If you have horizontal poles or the belts, right? Horizontal belts going around Sukkah, and you space them within 3 tvachim of each other, on Shabbos that's good. For Sukkah that's considered a mechitza. As long as you have love it, it's good. The Yisera Shabbos al Sukkah, but there's a chumrah that Shabbos has over Sukkah. That means it's not going to work for Shabbos, but it will be okay for Sukkah. And that is, Shabbos ain't teres ela ba'oimid meruba ala paretz. On Shabbos, whatever walls you have, there has to be more oimid. There's got to be more wall than paretz, than open space. Okay, so for instance, you're allowed to have doorways. You're allowed to have doorways. Doorways have nothing, as long as it's not more than 10 amas, and you can have a doorway. You can have a space. Okay, but you have to be within this formula of oimid meruba ala paretz, which is not the case by sukkah. Because if you have your sukkah, think of your sukkah of 2 walls and a tefach. Okay? So your 2 walls and a tefach, you have oimid meruba ala parts if you have 4 walls. But let's say I didn't have 4 walls. Let's say I had some doors in there. Once I put a door in, I already have mostly parts ala amid. It's still kosher. So that works. It says Yisera Shabbos al Sukkah. That will not work for Shabbos, but it could work for Sukkah. So Abai understood that. What are we talking about over here in this brayso? We're talking about Shabbos Sukkos. Says the Gemara, "My lab Yisera Shabbos is Sukkah as Sukkah." Aren't we saying that this Chumrah applies even on Shabbos of Sukkos? So you see, we don't say Amigu. The way I mean Amigu. The Gemara says like, no, that's not what we mean. Yisera Shabbos da Alma al Shabbos de Sukkah. This is a chumrah of a regular Shabbos, that a regular Shabbos this won't work, but on Shabbos of Sukkot it will work. Without that, I have the two walls.
The whole wall is open.
I have one wall that's open. No, but I have two and a tefach. Tzuras Pesach is considered closed. You have a Tzuras Pesach. But if I have two walls, no Tzuras Pesach, two walls and a tefach. Okay, and then I have a doorway on each of my walls. On the wall, the thing that I have is a wall. I have open space that I call my Pesach. That's my entrance. I don't want to use the open space. I want a doorway on my wall, right? That's open. That's okay. You can have a Pesach, but that won't work for Shabbos. But on Shabbos Sukkos, it will work. On Shabbos Sukkos, that will be okay. Even though on a regular Shabbos, it's no good. So, for the Gemara, Yachi listening nami Yisera Sukkah da Alma a Sukkah de Shabbos. Why don't you say a chumrah of Sukkos over Sukkos of Shabbos? You can go the other way also. There's a chumrah that will meaning we'll have a kula on Shabbos that we're not going to have that you won't be able to use on a sukkah. What's that? The ilu sukkah da Alma ba'i tefach shaychik. The ilu sukkah de Shabbos loy ba'i tefach shaychik. You see, the halacha is that on Shabbos, if you have a mavoi, all you have to put at the end of a mavoi is a pole, a vertical pole. That's called a lechi. That works for a mavoi. And that doesn't have to be a tefach. But on a sukkah, we said needs a tefach sheichik. So it should come out that on Shabbos of sukkahs, you should be able to use just a lechi, just a pole, and I shouldn't need an alma sheichik. So we should say, Rabbi should tell me a chiddush the other way, that there's a chumrah that there's a kula you can get on Shabbos sukkahs also that you don't have in a regular sukkah. Says the Gemara, you rather say, which we'll see in a minute, that if you put schach on a mavui that has a lechi, it's kosher. So when it says la yisracha, and I don't have to tell you that. Hashta mikilta lechamirta amrinan migu, so mechamirta lekilta lekol shechein. If I'm telling you that from something kal, which is sukkahs, right? A wall for sukkahs will work on Shabbos, which is more chamer, then obviously something that's considered a wall for Shabbos will certainly work for sukkah, which is more kal. Geshmak. Now Rav is going to tell us two halachas, one we just mentioned, and then Rav is going to tell us a tzricha, so why do I need both of these halachas? Gufa. Omer Rav, top of Omer Beis, Zayin Beis. So the halacha we just mentioned. Sikech al gabe mavui sheyesh lechi. If you put schach on top of a mavui that just has a lechi at the end, even though for sukkahs you normally would need, for sukkah you need a tefach shechek, on Shabbos it's kshera, it's good enough. But Amar Rav says another halacha. Sikach al-gabe pasi birois keshera. If you put schach on top of pasi birois, what are pasi birois? Pasi birois was a kula that Chazal made for people that were oila regel. When you be oila regel, so you're walking, you get thirsty. So they were wells, public wells, but you wouldn't be able to draw water from the well because it was in Rosh Hashanah. So they said, listen, we're not going to make it put up a whole machisa around. Put up 4 poles, like we spoke about the other day, an amma in each direction, an amma at the corners, an amma in each direction at the corner, and that'll be good enough. Okay, that'll work for Shabbos. So says Rav, okay, guess what? If you wanted to turn that into a sukkah, you could turn that into a sukkah on Shabbos of sukkahs. Put schach, roll out your schach over these pasi birais, and you'll have it. You can eat in that sukkah. Says the Gemara, that is sikach gabi pasi birais kashera. Now, just Teshus points out 1 second over here. Who is allowed to drink from this pasi birais? You weren't allowed to draw water from it and actually take from it. You let your animals could drink from it. But if you wanted to drink from it, you actually had to crawl down into the bar to drink from it. They didn't let you draw water from it. What? Correct. So Taisa says, and it was also only a heter for Eli Regalim. This wasn't for everybody. Take a look at the second thesis. Sikach agabi pasi b'rois kashera migadabi mechitzel in Shabbos. In fact, Taisa avagad le'etiru el Eli Regalim. This is only a heter for Eli Regalim. Ula Eli Regalim le'etiru el behemta. And this was only a heter for their animals. Avo adam mitapis v'yerim mitapis v'oila. A guy had to crawl in and out. There wasn't
a bucket.
You couldn't. That would be haitzah to use the bucket.
But if it was within the confines,
that's what Taisus is kasha. That they were only matter for behemoths, not for an adam. That's his kasha. Why are you making amigo? Says Taisus mikamakad. Even the midairaisa shari. You have to say that the possibly rice worked midairaisa. Because midairaisa, that's enough. Midairaisa and am and insurrection. I don't know why that is enough, but midairaisa it's enough. So therefore, since midairaisa it's enough, and it was only a chomer midirabanan that they wouldn't let you drink from it. So therefore, shari b'chalinin amrin amigu va'afilu midirabanan le'as mishum mitzvah sukkah. So for mitzvah sukkah, they allowed it. Okay, but that was just a good ha'ara. When you learn the Gemara, you know that passage verse is not a heter stam, but the midairaisa it does work. Okay. Now, the Gemara wants to know, why did the driver have to take both of these things? I got your point, Ravi. You said that it only works for Shabbos, it works for Sukkah too. So why do you have to give me two examples of Mavoi and Pasibirai? It says the Gemara, I'm sorry, you need both. Third line down. Diashvin and Mavoi, if you only told me Mavoi, Mishum the Ikashay, the fun is Malisa. Listen, Mavoi's got two good walls. You don't have two good walls, so maybe you wouldn't give the heter. At least you have something which you can consider four walls. Maybe that wouldn't work, and therefore you need both. But it's like and if you told me these two, but you didn't tell me the case that we had before of the lechi, then I would have thought only going from then I can that Abel Mikilta Lechamir Emalai. Therefore, you need the case where he said the first case where he said V'chem L'Shabbos, with the case where we were going from Sukkah to Shabbos. Okay, so this is the three cases. We have one case of Sukkah that we're machshir the tefach, and we're allowing you to use that for Shabbos, and then we have the two cases by Shabbos, which we're allowing you to use by Sukkah as well. Okay. Now we move on to the final din of the Mishnah, the Shechamas Miruba Mitzilasa. Okay, the final din of the Mishnah, and this is going to take us to the next Mishnah is on Tesam Aleph, the tab of Tesam Aleph. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabban Chamasa Machmas Sichuch. The sun, the sun needs to be blocked from your schach. V'loi Machmas. The fun is, but there's no concern if you have sunlight coming in from your walls.
Obviously,
so your sunlight
with only 4 poles.
You know, 4 poles are only going to work on Shabbos. That's not a din in Sukkah. That's a din in Shabbos. That's not a din in Sukkah. Rabbi Yoshia argues. Rabbi Yoshia says, "Af machmas defanais." You also need it for the walls. The walls need to be thick. You can't have skimpy walls. I don't know if you can even have see-through walls, like the new lightened sukkahs. Litton, whatever the name is. That's what Rabbi Yoshia says. We don't pass on it, don't worry. I'm Rabbi Yoshia, I'm sure that by my time to Rabbi Yoshia. What's up with Rabbi Yoshia? Why should you need to have a tzilsa merub mechamasa when it comes to walls? The pasuk says, "V'sakoisa al ha'aron es ha'pareches." We know the pareches was a mechitza between the kodesh and the kodesh hakadashim, and it was a partition. It wasn't a covering. But the Torah uses the lashon of v'sakoisa al ha'aron. You will cover the aron with the pareches. So you see pareches mechitza, The Parechas is mechitza v'kakar yerachman etzchacha, and the Torah calls it schach. Alma mechitza keschach be'inan. Therefore, I see that you need your mechitza to be like schach. Needs to for something to be considered mechitza, it needs to cover. It needs to be blocking. It needs to block out light. Rabbanan, what did Rabbanan do with that? Hahu de nikav be'porta. The mechzik keschach. The Rabbanan said that there was a din that you actually had to tilt or bend the top of the parechas over a little bit.
Right, so instead of hanging from the pole, it went over the top of the pole.
Or maybe even more. I don't know. It sounds a little bit like it bent over. It sounded like it bent over. I've never seen that in any of the diagrams. I don't know about that. Doesn't sound like it. The neck of Beipurta sounds like a little bit. The mechzik schach. Not that it was schach, that it looked like a schach. Okay. Rashi says, "Lamala porta ke'enga gasa mimiktsasa." Yeah. Okay. Amar Abaye. Now this is interesting. So Abaye makes a big lashitasa here. This is like a big one. I think there are eight Tanoim mentioned over here. He says they all hold the same thing. All right. It says Abaye, Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Gamliel, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer, the Acherim. That's Rabbi Meir. Kulu Svir, they all hold that a sukkah diras keva be'inan. A sukkah needs to be a permanent structure. It needs to be a permanent structure. Now, Tais is like, that's ridiculous. Because we're going to see in a minute that we're going to mention Beis Shammai and Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi is the shita of that your sukkah needs to be 4 amas by 4 amas. And Beis Shammai holds that your sukkah only has to be, and that's why he holds it's a diras keva. And Beis Shammai, we're going to say he holds a diras keva because you need Rosh Vishal Chanai. Well, it can't be. So that means, Kain. They're similar in their shita, but they're not that they all hold the same thing. They use the idea of diras keva, but they all use it differently. They hold of such a concept. So let's see it. So like the Gemara is going to go through each one now. Rebbe. Where do we find Rebbe needing a diras keva? The Tani Rebbe Emer Kol Sukkah Shein Ba'arba Amas Al Arba Amas Psula. Rebbe says that it needs to be a livable space. It needs to be 4 amas by 4 amas. Your sukkah 4 amas by 4 amas. That's the size of a room. I think legally a room needs to be maybe 8 by 8 feet. I think zoning wise to be considered a bedroom needs to have a window. I think it needs to be 8 by 8. I think. But maybe that's a chazan shira of 4 amas. But for a mezuzah needs to. You only put a mezuzah on a room that's 4 by 4. We do pass on that. That's why he holds that his sukkah needs to be diras keva. It needs to be a place that you live. It needs to be 4 amas by 4 amas. Okay. Rabbi Yoshia. Where did we see Rabbi Yoshia? The Hadamra. What we just mentioned. He says you can't live in a house that has see-through walls. They can't live in or very thin walls. Probably more likely, it needs to have some thickness to it. It's a diras keva. Rabbi Yehuda did not sukkah shigavei l'mala mechava. That from our Mishnah Daf Beis. Why does he say that 20 amas above 20 amas is no good? Because he holds that it is good because he holds it. You can make a diras keva. It should be a diras keva. That's fine. Rabbi Machshir that. Rabbi Shimon did not beis kel chasan v'gimel afilu tavach. Rabbi Shimon aimer gimel kel chasan v'da'al afilu tavach. He holds you need more. It needs to be a diras keva. You need to have 4 walls there. Even if the 4th wall could be smaller. But you need a place where you live. Rabbi Gamil, the Tanya, you make it on a wagon or a svina. So being that it's movable or portable, that's not considered diras keva. Rabbi Gamil paisel that Rabbi Kiva Machshir. Beis Shammai, where do we find Beis Shammai? It's not Misha Reishi Rabbi V'Sukkah V'Shulchanim B'Teich HaBayis. Beis Shammai paisel Beisil Machshir. So where do you see it from this case? This case that Rashi has to throw in for us. No, he doesn't. Someone else does. That if you remember that back to the Gimel Amar Aleph, this brisa is mavur that they're talking about 2 scenarios. They're talking about a bayis gadol, a sukkah gedela, and a sukkah ketana. But the way we get Beis Shammai from a sukkah ketana, which is 7 by 7, he holds that needs to be at least Rosh Yeruba v'Shulchanai. And if it's not, then it's going to be possible. Okay, Beisil Machshirin. Good. Rabbi Lazar, where do we get see him? Did not. If you make a sukkah like a teepee, or there's no roof, you just take your wall and you lean it onto your onto you take the wall of your sukkah and you lead it onto the wall of your house. So there's no real roof. Your wall is the roof. In those instances, that's no good. The blazer places. It has no roof. It is good. Again, the Gemara is in the same way. Blazer passes it because it's not considered diras keva. Achirim. What about Achirim? Remember Achirim is Reb Meir. He was called Achirim because he learned from. I'm sorry.
Because he learned from Acher.
Correct. Elisha ben Avuya, when he went off the derech, he was called Acher, and that's how he's referenced. And Reb Meir, one second. Reb Meir is called Achirim. He's called Achirim. Why? Sometimes is he mentioned and sometimes is he not mentioned. So I think the pshat is because in things that he learned after from Acher, from Elisha ben Avuya, but when he says those or memories that he said after Elisha ben Avuya was called Acher, that's when he's called Acher. What's the question?
It's not disparaging. Is it?
Maybe that's it needs to be clear like that, yeah. Okay. Acherim, the Tani, where do we see that? Acherim sukkah asuya k'shoivach. A sukkah that is made k'shoivach. Shevach is a dove coat, but it was made in a circle. He holds it's psula l'pisha en lazavius, and you can't live in a round house. Apparently, that's not considered a diras keva, and he holds you need a diras keva. Okay, that ends this sugya, and a message from tomorrow. Bring your calculators. We will be doing some math. Yeah, back to not trick, but more like geometry. Okay, good to see everybody on. Have a wonderful evening.